Thanksgiving weekend of 2010, I was tweeting, looking for other people to work with in Bitcoin. And I think I tweeted, is anyone else using this P2P currency, Bitcoin, and it was like shouting into an empty room. There were no replies, whether it's Elon Musk or Drew Houston that started Dropbox, or Jamie Siminoff that started Ring, or Melanie that started Canva, or Eric that started Zoom. They've all been involved somehow in my kiteboarding community at one time or another. And I was the first investor in Zoom Video and helped catalyze what became Canva. Doing venture capital now for longer than you've been alive.
Hello guys, so we are now in Zurich during Crypto Summit, and we met here with legendary venture capital investor Bill Tai. Great to have you here, Bill.
Hi, thank you, Anna. Really appreciate the time and look forward to giving a few words of advice if it's worth anything.
Yeah, so you're such a cool investor. You invested into companies which 23 of those companies went public and went into IPO. So can you tell, how did you start with venture capital investing as well? You invested into some projects as angel investor, for example, Dapper Labs. So can you tell about your background? How did you get involved into investing? And as well, how did you get involved in the crypto and blockchain space?
Sure. So I was originally trained in electrical and computer engineering and was trained to design computer chips initially. So very heavy into like digital logic, computer design, semiconductor stuff. I came out to Silicon Valley in the 80s, so I'm kind of ancient. And I was there in the period where it was getting the name Silicon Valley because there were a lot of silicon companies. And I think I was just lucky to be kind of there at the formative stages of the basic technology that would underpin everything else. And I ended up entering, after a couple of silicon-related companies I was involved with that both ended up going public, I ended up becoming a venture capitalist in 1991. So I've been doing venture capital now for longer than you've been alive. So I've been fortunate to see waves of technology flow from silicon, and I funded a bunch of chip companies, to things made of silicon, and I funded a lot of computer and communications hardware companies, routers and switches and hubs in the mid-90s. And then in the kind of right in the mid-90s, I founded an ISP that became 10 data centers that Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley took public in 1999. So that was kind of chips, boxes, networks that laid the foundation for all the stuff that we're doing today. I then took a few years off, started to kiteboard a lot, got sponsored as an athlete, but when Web 2 started, I came back into the investing game, helped start the Charles River Ventures office. My partner George and I seeded Twitter, and then we started to do a lot of these little applications that were not having to build their infrastructure, they just were expression layers on the cloud. That led to kind of chips, boxes, internet interface, to a wave of data science where there were new technologies to track the bits of information flowing to understand engagement and pull information out of data. So I founded a company called Treasure Data, and in the middle of all that, in 1999, a friend of mine, who was then CTO of Real Networks, told me he wanted to take Neil Stephenson's science fiction novel Snow Crash and build it in real life.
Which year was it?
1999.
Oh, that was first prototype of Metaverse?
Second Life. He built Second Life. So Second Life was one of the main real physics-based motion metaverses. Metaverse word, I think it did exist, but was never used in common language then. And he built this world where you'd build a digital avatar and you'd kind of walk around, and you could walk up to another avatar and then start typing, and there would be chat boxes, so you would talk. And the engagement was good for a few people that really liked to play with their avatars, but there wasn't much of a mechanism for interaction other than this chat function I took the role of Alan Greenspan Gollum. And if you know the name Alan Greenspan, he was the chairman of the Federal Reserve of the United States, which is in charge of the money printing machine there. So in Second Life, I was Alan Greenspan Gollum. In 2003, I still am Alan Greenspan Gollum. I don't use it very much, but Philip introduced the Linden dollar. So it was a digital currency in 2003. And clock forward, 2006, there were some individuals that were doing so much digital work for other avatars, paid in Linden dollars, exchanging on the Lindex, which was run by a young kid named Brock Pierce at that time. That digital avatar was on the cover of Business Week, I think, Ansi Chung, for becoming a millionaire in a metaverse. So it was already happening a long time ago. So when Bitcoin came out, I had already done a little bit of work on peer-to-peer networks, and I somehow stumbled across the white paper. And Thanksgiving weekend of 2010, I sent Philip a note. I was like, "This is it. This Bitcoin is it. We should use Bitcoin in Second Life." And there was a lot of discussion about.
So did you discover Bitcoin in 2010?
Yes. Yeah.
So did you find it just on the internet when you?
I think because I was Alan Greenspan Gollum in charge, and I wasn't really in charge of the money supply, I was just a character. And everyone in Second Life would get monthly stipend of Linden dollars. But because everybody that knew me at that time knew I was fascinated with economics, which is why I took the name Alan Greenspan Gollum, because I wanted to be the king of the money system. And although I could never be that in that world, I don't remember who sent me the white paper, but somebody sent me a note and just said, "You should read this white paper." And I didn't read it for a long time, months and months. I didn't read it. And then Thanksgiving, it was a holiday. I wasn't in the office. I had nothing to do. I read the paper. And I was like, wow. And so there was a big eye-opening moment for me. And there's some translation, some correspondence between Philip Rosedale and myself about Bitcoin. And I think I should find that note, but I think it was the headline email I sent. It was like something like, "This is it," or I can't remember what it is. And there is an old tweet. If you look on Twitter, Thanksgiving weekend of 2010, I was tweeting, looking for other people to work with in Bitcoin, and I can't remember. Yeah, I think I tweeted, "Is anyone else using this P2P currency?" Bitcoin, and it was like shouting into an empty room. There were no replies. There were literally no replies I was like, how could this be? This is so cool, but nobody cares, But that led me on this journey to really understand it, implement some of the stuff, and I ended up running into some of the people that would go on to found a company called Bitfury. And Bitfury, there were several individuals that were mining with computer rigs that over the internet communicated with each other and up their skills to move from computers to CPUs to graphics cards. They taught themselves how to program graphics cards. They taught themselves how to program FPGAs, and they were always a step ahead. But the world would eventually catch up. And then it finally got to the point where everybody that was reasonably good understood how to use FPGAs, and they said, "God, everyone's caught up again. We need to design a chip." And they asked for my help because I was a computer chip designer. I was like, "You can't design a chip. You got to go to university for that. You got to go to you got to have a real experience." And I was like, "Nah, that's not going to work." But they started working on understanding how to design semiconductor chips, so they found open source software to design transistors. And then they created their own transistor models and logic diagrams and created a circuit, their own silicon chip from scratch. And I was like, how is this possible? Boy, these guys are smart. And then I started to look at the design a little bit more, and I was like, this could actually work. So I ended up getting a couple friends that included Lars Rasmussen, who created Google Maps. He and I funded companies like Canva together. Employee 13 of Facebook, who was just a friend, and the head of infrastructure of Facebook. And the four of us put together enough personal money to pay for the silicon chip. and then boom, Bitfury just started to go because one of the co-founding investors, I guess, our vice chairman George Kikvadze, he happened to find an old, I don't know if it he or somebody referred to him a 40 megawatt hydro dam in the Republic of Georgia that had been built during the Soviet Empire to power a couple cities that were never built. And so Bitfury, yeah, so Bitfury built this, operation, this tin building right next to the dam, and used the silicon that we all had funded, and suddenly was, I think it was 40 megawatts, which in that era was a lot. So Bitfury became a substantial portion of the blockchain rewards, or Bitcoin, blockchain rewards at that time. And I was on the board.
Was it for you more like on the experimental side, or were you like quite a believer in this technology from the beginning?
I had experimented with peer-to-peer networks in '99, 2000 to do some video content distribution. So I understood the power of peer-to-peer for certain kinds of things. Big believer in that kind of decentralized architecture because it was more cost-effective than a centralized thing for serving a lot of bits. So I believed in the underlying technology. I also believed in the digitization of currency from the Linden dollar days at Second Life. The peer-to-peer underlying indelible accounting, totally got that. I was like, that's going to work. That's great. No government. I mean, I am not anti-government, but the ability to have a currency that was not controlled by a single government was it's interesting. It's very appealing to people. I'm not a libertarian. But I think it was really cool. So I did believe in the principles. I believed in the technology. It was very simple. I knew it could be done, and yes, so I knew it could work. I didn't ever know at the time it was going to catch fire the way it did. I thought it would be exceptionally cool to make, Second Life and other things, a Bitcoin economy. I didn't know it was going to cross over into real life with things like Silk Road, which then got a little scary, but it kind of started creeping up to become less a hacker thing and an early enthusiast thing to the same category of people that, that made things like the beta or VCRs and other porn and other things like that drive a lot of early adoption of things that become really mainstream. And it's not exactly the same crowd, but some elements of that just got in and really made it go wider, and it set up a kind of a foundation of usage to potentially make it go mainstream.
And did you keep some Bitcoin from that time as investment, or were you just like sending it to others and researching it?
I rely more on the companies that I invest in to do that kind of stuff because I don't like to handle a lot of the assets myself, and I do believe in self-custody, but Bitfury, over the life of its journey, it has not been able to hang on to many of these at all because in the early days of Bitcoin and Bitfury, there was no way to get liquidity on a lot of Bitcoin at one time. It was a big deal for us was to sell, Bitcoin for tens of dollars, $1 million at a time. That would have been a huge deal at that time. So Bitfury, I think, has probably mined somewhere between 800,000 and 1 million Bitcoins, but had to sell those almost immediately to get the cash to buy more silicon and servers to build out the data center. So it hasn't been able to accumulate lots of those, but it does have still significant assets in a variety of forms, more expressed as mining operations. We cut off 100 million watts and made that into public company Hut 8. It's bigger than that now. And then we've taken some other stuff, turned it into a SPAC company called Cypher Mining. So there's a proxy for the assets themselves that does hold value for me.
And do you still invest into hardware companies, or do you invest more into data online social companies?
The vast majority of the things I do now tend to be more expressions of electrons than moving the electrons physically themselves. So yes, it tends to be more software than hardware.
And do you still invest into hardware companies, or is your focus now shifted?
I will still look at hardware companies, but more of I'd say the majority of things that I do tend to be software-based companies.
And can you share some of your recent investments? How actively do you invest now? So you're now more angel investor, or do you work as well with any venture capital funds?
I do both. So I think relevant to the crypto space, 'cause I think that's more of what you do. So I am more. I guess I'm I don't know if it's 50-50 or where it swings, but I'm known for things like funding Zoom. I was the first investor in Zoom Video and helped catalyze what became Canva. I do have, right now, in 2022, CNBC has this list every year of the 50 top disruptive private companies. Of that 50, in the top 10, I'm the backer of 3.
That's nice.
None of them, only one is crypto. Actually, one is crypto, Dapper
Which
Labs.
one? Okay.
Yeah, so number 3 is Lineage Logistics, number 4 out of the 50 is Canva, and number 9 out of the 50 is Dapper Labs. So yes, there is crypto representation in the top 10 most disruptive companies per CNBC. So I do some things in the NFT space. I'm a co-founder of 2 NFT projects that have some traction. One is called MetaGood, and one is called oneof.com. And MetaGood is one that is fascinating on a number of fronts. It's a catalyst for collective action by communities that are interested in supporting different things. It actually originated with my investment in Dapper Labs. When I funded them, I could see the power of marketplaces around CryptoKitties, and I asked Dapper Labs to create for me a special edition CryptoKitty that I could auction off to support an ocean charity. So they created something called Hanu Kitty for me, and I launched it at one of my blockchain summits that I was doing and still do with Sir Richard Branson on his island when he can attend. He's not always there, but it's something called the Necker Blockchain Summit.org, which is fun to look at. It's an organization that was, or it's a conference, so to speak, that was created to try to bring a little bit more credibility to what was at the time, a long time ago, a space where Silk Road and things like that and Mt. Gox collapsing were happening to what was really...
When did you organize it for the first time?
I think it was 2015 or 2016, so a little bit after. It took a year to put it together. So it was for me, it was a reaction to what was happening with Bitcoin first being a land of kind of interesting technologists to looking like a land attracting a lot of scumbags, if I could say that. So I created something called the Necker Blockchain Summit for Social Good. And the objective of that group was to try to find blockchain applications that could be used for everything from environmental conservation to economic empowerment, or things that could just help society and the planet, because I knew it had that potential. So at one of the much later blockchain summits, 2018, I think, we had the special edition NFT from CryptoKitties, launched it there. It ultimately sold for about $50,000 US. It was the first ever NFT for ocean charity, and I gave the money to Captain Paul Watson of Sea Shepherd at the time to park his ship in front of the turtle nesting area in Antigua, to have people walk the beaches 24/7 every day for months, to make sure that all those little baby turtles didn't get eaten by birds, and the big ones didn't get slaughtered by people that lived on the island, and those turtles got off the ocean successfully. So it was the first instance where I was like, yep, I can use an NFT to elicit a lot of interest from a lot of people that care about the same thing, that will place the value on something knowing that it will have real impact. And that idea sat in my head for 3 or 4 years until 2021, when I put together Danny Yang, who used to run the Stanford Bitcoin meetup groups in 2013, and Amanda Terry, who was an ex-Twitter, ex-NBC type person, operations, put them together to create MetaGood. The company's created an on-chain, a collection called On-Chain Monkey, which is also a first. It's the first ever fully on-chain collection all in one transaction. The NFT is not a bunch of pictures that were digitized and then stuck on distributed file systems with a reference locator to a chain. It's one single math expression that is a scalable vector graphics file with a data table, and in that one block, it renders 10,000 different things, with all done in one click. So there was only one gas fee for the entire thing. And so
so how does it distribute it between the buyers if it's made only in one transaction? How does it work if, for example, one gets this NFT?
Well, it renders 10,000 different things. So in the end,
so for example, 10 people bought these NFTs and they will have different rendering?
yes, they're all unique. It's and the data table is a list of attributes. In the same way, you might pick in a more widely known collection like a Bored Ape. Some of them might have cigarettes, some sunglasses, or whatever. So, but a certain percentage will have each of those, and then they're different colors. So you have kind of a math expression that mixes all those things, and so there's many different variants. Each one is individually unique, but some have traits that are more rare than others. So the on-chain monkey data table is structured like that, where a certain number will have will be naked, a certain number will have a striped shirt, or whatever it might be, and then boom, there's 10,000 of those. So yes, every single one is unique, but it comes from one math expression.
Yeah, that sounds cool. So how generally is this? What's the idea of this project? You create NFTs and then you donate to some charity causes.
Yes.
And as well, I saw you have another project, this on-chain monkeys. So how are they connected to MetaGood NFTs?
Yeah, because so MetaGood is the corporate entity that expressed the collection that is called On-Chain Monkey. And so that brand of NFT has its own website and its own brand. And as those items trade on different exchanges, including things like OpenSea, a certain percentage of each transaction goes into a pool. That pool both funds some operations, but it's also a pool that today I think we're always pulling money out and giving it away, but there's 2,000 ETH or so in that pool. And so people can...
So there was recently the news, congratulations by the way, that you raised $5 million into that pool?
$5 million was an equity investment, a standard venture capital investment into the company. On top of that, we have 2,000 ETH in a pool. And that pool grows a little bit every day, and then it gets donations a little bit, depending on which projects get approved. But people can suggest interesting projects to that, to the DAO that holds that. And then people, those are filtered a bit, and then people in the DAO vote on where funds can be allocated. And before the official DAO was launched with the big community, we did a bunch of really interesting projects. So we funded there was a bunch of art that was at nighttime using lights put on the entire building where the climate summit was being held in Glasgow. So Alexis Andre's art was placed on the building to draw attention to climate change. We did another really cool project where everyone I think has seen a National Geographic cover of a young girl with bright green eyes, Afghan girl. So when the US withdrew from Afghanistan, that left a power gap, and the Taliban obviously, took over everything, and people like her that were iconic Western figures were a little bit in danger. So you might have heard that she was evacuated on Thanksgiving weekend. That was handled by Sophia Swire of Future Brilliance, but
yeah,
it was...
I know her.
Oh, you do?
I heard the story actually.
Okay, so we funded it. So the funds for that operation came from the on-chain monkey trading revenues. So we have this idea, this concept of a giant ball of good karma with everybody that's an on-chain monkey holder kind of holding that up like a giant magic wand. And if there are projects that are in need of a little bit of capital, we can make a difference. Everyone can basically put their hands on it and take that magic wand and tap and tap and tap and just do good things for this planet. And currencies are a fascinating thing because currencies are backed by faith. Right? They used to be backed by gold, And then they got backed a little bit by oil, but they're backed by, or military power, backed by faith. It's a belief. Do you believe in it or not? And Bitcoin gives you a belief because you believe from a math expression that the accounting is clear, right? But there's another kind of karma, another kind of currency, I think, which is when you do a favor for somebody, they owe you in a way, right? It's almost like a security. It's not, I shouldn't say it. No, SEC, though, erase that part, please. But anyway, so the karma is a currency. And currencies that move around in an economy create a GDP. So to the extent that there's, I give you karma, it makes you feel good, you give karma to 2 other people, they give it to 6 other people. We want to create essentially an economy of good karma because people feel the best when they're doing something nice for someone else. And so to the extent that we can grow this economic expression and alignment of interest of people doing good things for each other, it's a good thing. And then I think people could actually maybe make money because if the GDP grows, the value of the unit exchange will grow as well. So that was the mental experiment that was underlying what we did with MetaGood Company, the On-Chain Monkey collection, and another NFT type of currency, an off-chain currency we have that are bananas. So if you have an on-chain monkey, there are various methods to kind of go out and earn bananas or have people give you bananas for doing good things. So it's almost like a mix of a social reputation engine where people that are doing good things for the community.
So these are like tokenized bananas? So
they're not yet tokenized. They're not yet tokenized because I think we have such an interesting investor group as well, whether it's Charlie Lee that created Litecoin, or Bobby Lee that had the biggest exchange that introduced CZ to cryptocurrency. He had BTCC a long time ago, to so old OG crypto people, to Owen Wilson and Woody Harrelson, to Richard Branson's daughter and son, one that runs Virgin Unite, charitable people. So we have this really interesting group where what we want to do is do what I described, but we also want to do it in a way that it is bulletproof and from a regulatory perspective, very clean. And because we're out there to do good things for this planet, and we don't want to have like a little speed bump or a point of friction where, oh, they didn't follow this rule, or oh my God. So I think the kinds of things we do, we have not yet launched a tokenized currency because we want to make sure that if we do that, we better be doing it right.
So these are just like points which every person gets for doing like more stuff?
Yes, but you can buy things with them. Okay, so
what can you buy with those bananas?
Oh, we have really cool merchandise. I wish I had some of my stuff. My bags are packed and about to fly, but we have these like everything from really cool like baseball caps to hat with the on-chain monkey, a ski knit kind of a ski cap. We've got some jackets from a line that are going to be selling at Fred Siegel in LA. If people that know LA would know Fred Siegel store, but it's we sponsored a female race car driver in one of her races, or maybe more than one of her races, and she has a line of these really cool racing jackets coming out that have a little on-chain monkey logo on there. So most of it's kind of merchandise for now, but you can do all kinds of things with these little bananas now.
That's fun. And what are your future plans for MetaGood? Like, do you plan to focus on any specific types of projects to provide donations to, or like it can be anything? And how many people in your DAO who decide whether to give donations to this or that?
So I think in the spirit of decentralization, we do not want to be forcing things too much in any one direction. We want the community to speak for itself. We do want to steer it a little bit so that there's it's a little bit like content moderation. We will kind of steer away from things that could get people into trouble, and steer towards things where we think there's a great return on the capital that gets provided. And sometimes these projects are not very big in dollar value, but exceptionally interesting and cool that have a lot of impact. For example, a couple of ETH, and I forget the exact amount, but there was a request to rehabilitate a skate park in Brazil that had gotten destroyed by a flood. And it was like really just, lots of stuff in it, and that cement had kind of gotten crumbly and all that. So they redid it, repainted it, lots of cool art graffiti all around the edges. And the base floor of the skate park, it was so cool of them, they created an on-chain monkey. So if you fly above it with a drone, you literally look down and you see an on-chain monkey on the ground, and there's kids that couldn't do anything for a long time that are in that park every day, and families do little picnics there, and it's just like, it's a micro thing, but it's really cool. And so we do some big things, we do some little things, and it's like whatever people have in their heart, they can bring up, and then the community basically votes.
So how many people in community who vote?
There's thousands. Yes, and I don't remember the exact number. You'll have to ask Danny and Amanda that number, but it's thousands.
And if to talk about some like use cases, some specific companies, for example, maybe decentralized social media or zero knowledge proofs, or any other trends you see developing?
I do see I don't know the exact timing, but there is clearly a groundswell against centralized social media and the control of information and how
And
that gets you.
especially you're early investor in Twitter.
Yes, yeah. So a lot of these things, I think, given the data privacy rules, that are good. I think they make it a little harder to implement these companies, but I think in the end, there were a couple of centralized players that were essentially taking and building models of you and marketing that model of you to advertisers and keeping all the money when, is that fair? I don't know. People didn't think about it because they created a lot of innovation around communication and communities and things like that, but they've been very more than fairly rewarded for that. And so with the trends in technology today that allow kind of the deconstruction of that model, and I think the general public pushback against other people controlling your data, the soil is ripe for the planting of those kinds of seeds to create more decentralized versions where you as the individual have a little bit more sovereign identity, a little bit more control over your own data set, and can steer the marketing of that data on an opt-in basis, and possibly actually get rewarded for your own participation in that. So I think the ad model that exists today, where somebody like a Facebook will have an advertiser create a content unit, and it whips by the page and they count it and they bill, that's going to change to you getting engaged in some content and the advertiser giving you a loyalty point or a token as a reward directly for your attention, as opposed to going to a third party.
Do you use yourself any decentralized social media?
Not a lot yet, because I think the concepts are all there. Social media, like any marketplace, has this natural kind of marketplace value, exponential marketplace value, where if you take 2 dots, there's 1 line, 3 dots, 3, 4, there's 6, so it goes exponentially, the value grows. I think most of the decentralized media sites are not quite there yet in critical mass to have profound value to either users and therefore advertisers. But they're going to get there. So use them exponentially more the more people are on there. And people are still stuck with this legacy of they have to use their Instagram. They got to still go to Facebook, even though
because all users, all traffic.
Exactly. So it's sticky. But things change with generations, and you see that happening at Facebook now. I think a lot of people of the current new generation won't go on there because it's their parents' site. And they're not there to tell their parents what they're doing. And Facebook was really smart to buy Instagram to move a notch down. And WhatsApp doesn't have that stigma so much because there's not imagery so much. But those networks are still very sticky. But I think they will, like everything, I wouldn't predict that they'll completely fall apart and crumble, but I think the value of the newer architectures, particularly if tokenized rewards post-regulatory clarity can come about, where there's clarity on, well, if I get tokens for attending something, is that income? Do I have to pay taxes on that? Is it liquid or not liquid? When those kinds of things are answered and the mechanisms are in place to create economic alignment, then I think they'll just explode.
You're from Silicon Valley, and I guess you mostly invested into companies as well based in Silicon Valley. And Silicon Valley has been always considered as capital of technological innovations. But now the different centers of innovation shift as well. Be it a lot of people still complain about the quality of life now in Silicon Valley, in San Francisco, and so on. So, do you see any other centers of innovations emerging?
You know, technology is truly becoming decentralized in a way. I think most of the good, the advanced development comes from economically advanced countries. But I think it's no longer innovation. There's never been a monopoly. It felt like there was a monopoly on it when it was the world of silicon, because it took a certain kind of education and a density of that type of education to create silicon chips. But as we've gone to the expression layer on the UI, it started to expand everywhere, and data science starting to expand everywhere. And you know, I funded in the last couple of years companies in the Ukraine, Reface. I'm one of the seed backers of that company, and talk about grit and being able to perform when you're literally at, you know, in a country at war. You know, so we had to hustle to help, and you may know them, Dimesh, that's the CEO of Reface, but during the war, still going on, they literally had to move everybody to Western Ukraine, working out of hotels, and some of the people had to leave the country. So even though there's still some in their country, it's survived, and it's still generating revenue and still alive. And I funded companies in London. I happened to back the former CTO of Cambridge Analytica. That was no, the CTO, whose name is Alex Taylor. And you know, there was a company that figured out how to leverage centralized social media with their data repositories and really wave that bat around to do some interesting things. But Alex, now he's a reformed data scientist, and we are working on making healthcare data far more effective at driving patient outcomes in an efficient way with a data framework, so that you can actually have, you know, an AI-based machine learning to tell you what is the best, lowest cost path to a solution.
And you as well mentioned that currently you don't have any managers, any assistants. You manage everything on your own. So what's your usual day schedule? How, like, what you're interested mostly on, focus mostly on, and as well, where did you find the companies you invest into, and how do you select whether to invest or not?
You know, so there's many questions embedded in that question, but I'd say my life completely changed about, I guess it's about 10 years ago. I'd have to check. Roughly 10 years ago, when Eric Yuan, who ended up founding Zoom, that was originally called SASB, by the way, so it had a different name. But he asked me to fund him, and I said yes on the spot. You know, and I just knew that there would be a foundational change in the way video was delivered. And there's a lot of technical elements as to why Zoom is better and more scalable than Teams or Skype or WebEx or all those other things that you don't use, I presume. But when Zoom was born, I had this network, as I always had, of kiteboarders around the world who were my friends who were techies. And we used it to communicate. And we used it to kind of live a decentralized life without knowing what we were doing. A lot of my network is this group of technical people. There were some very prominent technical people like, you know, Sergey Brin and Larry Page that learned to kiteboard before Google went public, that drew a lot of attention to the sport. So whether it's Elon Musk or Drew Houston that started Dropbox, or Jamie Siminoff that started Ring, or Melanie that started Canva, or Eric that started Zoom, they've all been involved somehow in my kiteboarding community at one time or another. And we're like a giant spider web, a distributed network of people holding hands, where every once in a while there's a little vibration. And if it's a cool vibration that everybody resonates with, everybody runs over to help. And so, Melanie got her funding from a lot of people in the community. Some of the ideas that became product lines in her company came from the community. And it's a powerful way to provide sort of a fertilizer fabric when there's capital that's like rain and a little seed pod can sprout. And so I find a lot of my companies through my personal network in that way. And I think because I've been able to effectively live on Zoom, I've had a competitive advantage because I'm used to it, And I was telling Eric Yuan that when COVID hit, Zoom had already gone public, but I think the infrastructure, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the infrastructure was built for around 30 million meetings a day. And all of a sudden COVID hits, and it hit in the winter of like 2019, 2020. By February, I think, Zoom had so much load on it that even though they couldn't fly around very easily, Zoom had to build its infrastructure out to handle, I think it was 200 million meetings a day, from 30 to 200 in 6 months. And then like 10 years to get to 30, and then they got to like 8x in a few months. And then the next month it was 300 million, and I was texting with Eric, and I was like, Eric, I just realized I've lost my competitive advantage. For 10 years, I've been able to be anywhere, any place, and invest anywhere because of Zoom, and now everybody can do that. And I was a little frightened, but I think the work methodologies and processes that you learn when you have a born on Zoom company are very different. And I also had started a company in 2011 called Treasure Data, and it was built around a couple founders from Japan. And we had our engineering team in Japan and our, kind of work headquarters in Mountain View. And from day one, we held all of our meetings on Zoom because there was no one place, So I think there's a certain construct for starting, building, and operating a group of people that are not in the same place, and you can still get a lot done. Bitfury was like that. Bitfury had 700 people in 16 countries, and we never really had a headquarters. So I think it's a different operating style that is available to people today because the world is a metaverse on Zoom. You literally, every time you're in a Zoom call, you are digitally abstracting yourself into a bunch of bits, putting them in that screen, and you're in a world with the other people doing the same thing. And you can come on as Lawyer Cat any day you want. So Zoom, by definition, is already a metaverse.
Yeah, and we see more and more things going into decentralization to be able to connect with anybody everywhere. Thank you for such exciting conversation and sharing your expertise and your investments with us.
Thank you, Anna.